China was about to take over America's online shopping. Temu and Shein weren't just popular, they were dominating.
Take a look at this chart. It shows Temu's growing popularity against Amazon through site visits.
In 2023, both apps consistently ranked in the top 3 most downloaded shopping apps in the US. Temu was hitting number 1 on the App Store multiple times, and Shein not far behind. At one point, Temu was racking up over 100 million US downloads and outspending every retailer on digital ads except Amazon itself.
We got this beautiful dress from Shein.
Check Shein before you ever buy anything from any other online boutique.
And the answer is Shein and Temu.
I literally own over 10 pairs of Shein shoes and they are literally incredible.
Shein was reportedly generating $45 billion a year in revenue and selling thousands of new fashion styles daily, many powered by real-time data from TikTok trends.
They were everywhere, in your feed, in your group chats, and on your doorsteps within just a couple of days.
Temu sold everything from socks to power drills for prices that felt illegal. And in a way, they kinda were. They bypassed import taxes using a legal loophole, flooded the US with ultra-cheap goods, and used billions in ad spend and subsidies to buy market share. It worked.
So well, in fact, that Amazon quietly sounded the alarm.
Jeff Bezos was reportedly paying close attention, and Amazon quietly launched a budget storefront called Amazon Hall just to keep up.
But now, things look very different.
Temu's user base in the US has collapsed by over 50% in just 3 months. Shein is pulling back too. They're both slashing ad spend, shifting focus to Europe, and scrambling to respond to one major problem. The US government closed the loophole that made their entire business model possible.
This isn't just a story about fashion or cheap gadgets. This is a story about power.
China's growing influence, American companies under threat, and what happens when global e-commerce runs itself headfirst into geopolitics.
To understand what went wrong here, we have to understand how these companies took off in the first place.
Shein didn't become the most downloaded shopping app in the US by accident. It reinvented fast fashion with a model powered by real-time trend tracking, lightning-fast production, and an algorithm that could spot and launch new styles in days, not weeks.
Temu took a different route.
Backed by Chinese giant PDD Holdings, it launched in 2022 with one goal: flood the US market. It offered prices that made even Amazon look expensive, ran a Super Bowl ad promising users they could shop like a billionaire.
Download the Temu app and shop like a billionaire.
And reportedly would lose $30 per customer in the US on purpose just to get market share.
But the secret sauce here wasn't just clever marketing or cheap labor. The secret was a US legal loophole.
A rule called de minimis allowed any package under $800 in value to enter the US without paying tariffs. So instead of importing in bulk and paying import taxes, Shein and Temu shipped individual packages directly from China to your house. No duties, no warehouse costs, no customs delays.
And it worked. In less than a year, Temu hit 100 million downloads in the US App Store.
Shein was reportedly generating over $45 billion in annual revenue. I mean, the two of them upended the retail playbook. And it wasn't just small brands who were worried.
Behind the scenes, Amazon was freaking out.
In late 2024, Amazon quietly launched Amazon Hall, a storefront filled with low-priced products, often sourced from Chinese manufacturers, designed to mimic Temu's wild pricing and fast shipping. It wasn't heavily promoted, but it was a signal. Amazon felt the pressure.
Jeff Bezos himself was paying close attention here.
He reportedly spoke with Trump about tariff issues, especially as political pressure around Chinese imports started heating up. Temu and Shein weren't just fringe players. They were starting to eat into Amazon's market share, especially with younger, budget-conscious shoppers who were fine waiting a few extra days to save 40 to 60% on nearly identical products.
Amazon sellers were furious.
Forums became filled with complaints about how Amazon had become, quote, Temu trash, as consumers stopped caring about brand names or shipping speed. All that mattered here was price.
It was clear. Temu and Shein weren't just another trend, they were a threat. But then everything changed.
On May 2nd, 2025, President Trump made a surprise announcement. He was scrapping the de minimis loophole for parcels arriving from China and Hong Kong. He called it a scam against our country and imposed a massive 90% tariff on any Chinese packages under $800. That was later reduced to 30%, but the damage was done.
See, Temu's entire business model depended on that loophole.
Without it, prices would have to go up, way up. And almost overnight, Temu's US numbers began to collapse. Between March and June of 2025, Temu lost over half its monthly active users in the US, dropping from more than 80 million to just about 40 million. Shein lost 12% of its users in the same period.
To make things worse, both companies started to cut their ad spending hard.
Temu slashed its US marketing budget by 87%, and Shein pulled back by nearly 70%. These were two of the biggest advertisers in the country, and suddenly they disappear from your feed.
The result? They fell off the charts.
Temu, once in the top 10 apps in America, had dropped out of the top 60 by early summer. The golden age of subsidized Chinese e-commerce in the US was over.
With its US game plan wrecked, Temu had to move quickly, and its solution? Stop shipping from China.
Temu overhauled its US operation and began fulfilling orders from sellers based in the US. That helped it avoid the new tariffs, but created a new set of problems. Because shipping from the US meant higher costs, longer restocking cycles, and most importantly, less control over inventory and quality. Suddenly, Temu wasn't the sleek, cheap, algorithmic machine it once was. It was just another online marketplace, only now with thinner margins and a shrinking customer base. Meanwhile, without the ad dollars to keep the app visible, Temu's presence on Google, TikTok, and Meta began to fade. The drop in visibility led to fewer downloads, and fewer downloads led to fewer orders, which is a classic death spiral.
It was clear. Temu's US expansion wasn't just slowing, it was unraveling. While Temu was in survival mode, Shein had its eyes on Wall Street.
For over a year, Shein had been preparing for a blockbuster IPO, first in the US, then in the UK. But neither government was interested in rolling out the red carpet because regulators were raising red flags over Shein's supply chain, alleged use of forced labor, and concerns about user data privacy. So Shein shifts its focus to Hong Kong, where scrutiny would likely be more predictable. While Shein is huge, its business depends on global growth, and the US was its crown jewel.
Now that crown is cracking.
Without that de minimis loophole, Shein is forced to raise prices or eat into its profits. It still has an army of TikTok influencers and diehard Gen Z fans, but user engagement is down, and with fewer shoppers, a global IPO becomes just harder to justify.
So now with America very hostile, Temu and Shein set their sights on Europe.
And for now, it's working. According to Sensor Tower, Temu's monthly active users jumped 76% in France, 71% in Spain, and 64% in Germany. Shein, meanwhile, also saw big growth in Europe, especially in the UK, France, and Germany. Their ad spend reflects this shift because Temu is increasing its ad budget in France by 115%. They're betting big on Europe as the next frontier.
But the clock may be ticking there too,
because policymakers there started to raise similar concerns. There's talk of adding a €2 small package processing fee for every item shipped from outside the EU. The UK is also reviewing its own version of the de minimis rule, and if those doors start to close, Temu and Shein could face the same squeeze they're seeing in the US.
For now, Europe is a lifeboat, but it may not be a long-term solution.
While Temu and Shein were struggling to stay afloat, Amazon wasn't wasting time. Amazon Haul, its experimental storefront of ultra-low-cost items that was quietly launched in late 2024. And the strategy here, let customers browse a Temu-style interface, cheap goods, often from China, but with Amazon's reliability and shipping infrastructure.
Early reviews were mixed, but the message was clear. Amazon was willing to play defense and offense.
US sellers cheered, and Amazon could reclaim customers who had strayed toward cheaper alternatives. The move wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Amazon was reminding everyone, you might beat us on price for a little while, but you can't outlast us.
And that's proving true.
Temu and Shein burned billions to buy loyalty, but it wasn't loyalty, it was just bargain hunting. And as soon as those prices rose and ads stopped, users clicked away. Meanwhile, Amazon stayed steady, still expensive comparatively, still dominant, but increasingly irreplaceable.
The rise of Shein and Temu was never just about fashion or $2 phone cases.
It was about China's ambitions, economic, technological, and cultural, playing out in the global marketplace. These companies weren't just startups, they were part of a broader strategy to dominate global consumer platforms. But their fall in the US reveals a critical weakness. The moment their operating advantages were challenged, the loopholes closed, the ad budgets fell, everything just started to collapse. The lesson here isn't that China can't build global platforms. It can and it will again, but sustainable success in the West is going to require more than cheap prices and scale. It requires more transparency, compliance, and just getting in with lawmakers.
And for the US, this is a warning too.
Because it took years for lawmakers to close trade loopholes that was costing billions in lost tariffs and hollowing out domestic e-commerce. If the government didn't enact, fact, Temu and Shein could still be winning. In fact, they'd be growing. And for Amazon, the saga proved something important. Even the world's largest online retailer can be disruptive. Shein and Temu are regrouping, retooling, and they're looking to Europe and Latin America, but their golden run in the US is over.
And what's left is a case study, not in fashion, but in how global ambition collides with politics, policy, and power. Let me know what you think below. Is this it from China's e-commerce platforms? Or is this just a rocky start and maybe it's just the beginning? While you're at it, you can help support this channel by subscribing so you don't miss the next one.